Welcome back to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. Jason Bale and Hard Money Bankers co-host Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouse. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. We certainly appreciate the support. If you're a return viewer, watcher, listener, audience member, you know that we like to bring on actual guests that are actually real estate investors in the trenches every day, doing live deals and not just industry gurus. The guest we're going to bring on an interview here in a second comes from the mobile home park space. Definitely an asset class that as of today, I have not been involved in. I have lent on a mobile home park, but I don't own any personally. And I don't believe Ian does either. So, we'll be learning along with everybody else. So definitely looking forward to this guest, Ian.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. I had a brain fart moment as we were hopping on here, and I was like, man, you look really familiar because I could remember his voice. And then he reminded me I was on his podcast, and we had really good conversation. So another guy with great mindset. You guys will really enjoy this podcast today. The best thing you guys can do, because we're out here looking for the best guest at any time, is we don't care about the likes and subscribes. But the best way we can compliment our guests so they keep coming back is giving them a share, right? They're taking time out of their day. They're taking time out of their investing schedule to come and talk to us. Not only do Jason and I get to learn, but everybody else out here gets to learn too. So please feel free to give the show a share. And that's enough about us. Why don't we bring in Mitchell all the way from Washington State, way out there on the West Coast. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. First of all, I really appreciate it. I'm excited to jump in with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we just start real quick background, kind of where you came from, how you got into real estate and entrepreneurship and, and all the fun stuff that, we all put our heads down on every day and, focus on.
Yeah, I'll start early, but I'll go quick through this because I think, I could go for hours on my story, but I started young working at the airport. That was kind of I was interested in aviation. And I always go back to this story because one of the things that really struck me was, well, I was out there on a Tuesday filling up airplanes and these guys are all flying around. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? Everybody else is working. What are you guys doing? And so early on, I was probably 15, 16 years old asking these pilots, like, why are you flying around during the week in these beautiful airplanes while everybody's working? And it kept going back to business and real estate. And so from there, I picked up Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think it was a recommendation. And once I read that, I'm like, okay, there's a different way to do this. I've got to explore this. So I was pretty early. My first property was 19 years old, just a piece of land right before the big 08 run up. So you can all guess how that went. Didn't go well, but I learned a lot. And I started investing in real estate really early in my 20s. My 20s, I was also working W-2 jobs, and I got to really understand that I really, really didn't want that. And so throughout my 20s, I was investing. I was working a couple different jobs, corporate, trying to climb the corporate ladder. And I'm like, to hell with this. This is insane, So fast forward through my 20s, late 20s, I had a wife and a little girl, and I was working for a med tech corporation. They were killing me. They were crushing my life. Weekends were it didn't belong to me. And so we saved up a little bit of money, and I said, hey, Hannah's my wife. I said, hey, why don't we rent the house out? I was living in Minnesota, and why don't we just buy a camping trailer and we'll just live in the camper until we figure it out in real estate. And she's like, let's do it. So we moved all the way to the West Coast with a little bit of money and a little bit of rental income. And I went into selling real estate and trying to figure out how to invest in it. And so that was I would say I really started to begin investing in real estate at 29. Today I'm 40, so 11 years ago. And I just jumped off the entrepreneurial cliff, man. I was scared to death, little kid, broke as hell, living in a KOA in Kent, Washington. And I just had my back against the wall. I had to figure it out. So that's really how I started.
Yeah, the old humble beginning story. And I think a lot of people share that experience. I don't know that I shared the experience of seeing a fancy car or seeing an airplane, something like that. But then the back against the wall, I think a lot of people come from that position of all right, man, I'm against the wall. I know I want to do something, but I'm too scared. I know you said you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Was there any other mindset things at that point, or were you so locked in and determined it didn't matter, or did you need to build yourself and hype yourself up to actually go and execute?
I think that my mindset's grown over time, right? And I'm constantly working on my mindset. Like, how do I look at the world? What's my perspective? At the time, I think that it was just as simple as the pain of work, the pain of a W-2, the pain of not being there for my wife and for my kiddo. I mean, she was a year or two old, and I barely knew her because I was just working all the time. And so for me, my mindset was looking at the pain of these things and the risk of these things. And for me, I really concluded that working the W-2 was the most risky thing I could do, because it was crushing my relationships. It was crushing my lifestyle. And the least risky thing I could do was to quit and go start something new. Beyond that, I didn't have the tools at 29 to go invest in real estate. But I was curious, and I was learning as fast as I could and listening to podcasts like this and diving in. But I also had, this like undying belief. I've always thought that I was going to make it, even through, hard times or insecurity or lack of knowledge or lack of context. I've always had this like sort of undying belief that I was going to make it. And I think that comes probably from my childhood. My parents were always very, very encouraging. And I had that foundation psychologically. And today it's like, I think it all starts with belief, as woo-woo as that sounds. If you believe you can do something, then you'll find the contacts, you open the doors, you'll find the podcast, the book, the mastermind, whatever it is, you'll find it. But if you don't believe it, then the door is shut to you. So I think I had a lot of belief early on, a little bit of knowledge, a lot of arrogance, or ignorance. And I just started swinging.
Yeah, we should circle back on some of this mind stuff thing. I want to jump into one topic first, and then I like where this mindset stuff's going, and I think that's important for ourselves and our audience. Tell us about kind of the first bigger deal you did, right? Like the first, let's call it real deal that kind of got you involved. You said you own a few smaller rental properties and stuff like that, and that's always a starting point, but something that will really move the needle, a bigger project. And, if it's the mobile home, one of your first mobile home parks, we can start with that. But, how you kind of decided, like, what, I'm sick of this $300 a month rent. This is great. This helps, but like, that's not catapulting me to the next level. Like, what made you, get to the next level? How did you find some of those deals? Maybe how did you finance those deals, and walk us through maybe a transaction like that?
Yeah, I'll walk you through a property we bought in New Bern, North Carolina. We still own it today, 39 unit mobile home park. And this was our first like jump into the MHP space. And this is my first time buying something in the commercial space. I was always pretty intimidated by it and scared of it. I think you say the word commercial and people get nervous. And I was the same way. I had sold a home in Tacoma, Washington that I'd paid off through just hard work and one month at a time. And I had some cash, and I met my partner, Travis Dillard. Him and I dove in together, and I'll go backwards for a second before this deal. I remember we were sitting in his office, and we asked the question, why do some people go their whole life and have 2 to 3, 4 or 5 units, something like that, and then others have like hundreds or thousands? And so that set us on this adventure of learning and strategy and like understanding how to underwrite properties and mindset and meeting people. So we went through a 6-month period of joining masterminds. We were just like digging, trying to figure this out. And by the end of that, we're like, look, we have enough to go buy something big. At least we thought so. So I had some cash. He sold a duplex, and he ticked in, and we bought a 39 unit mobile home park. We bought it all the way across the country on the East Coast. And the reason we did that was it looked like a good deal. And second, we didn't want to be able to touch it. We wanted it to be a flight or a full day away, because we had this vision that we wanted to build this company that could invest anywhere. Now, it didn't mean we could invest anywhere. We just did. And honestly, the first couple months, the deal was pretty tough. We had some long-term RVers. A lot of those moved out. We had management problems. We had all these problems. And but my partner and I, we never butted heads. We always worked together. We were like, this is great. We turned that property around. And from there, it gave us that sort of experience and that confidence to launch off of that. So this deal, 39 units, I can't remember the exact price. I think it was right around $1.1 million. We saw upside in rents. We saw upside in cutting expenses. And we saw upside in also filling some of the vacant RV pads with long-term tenants. We did standard bank financing. I think it was 25-year AM, 5-year term, that kind of thing. Lower interest than today, because we all know where interest rates have gone. But we had a good delta between interest rates and cap rate, and we also had the ability to force appreciate the park. So that was our first deal.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And maybe this is reading in between the lines, but like, why mobile home parks? Like, what attracted you to it? When I think mobile home parks, I think 8 Mile, right? Like, most people are like, oh, the trailer trash around the corner. I'm not
Sure.
trying to be rude, but that's what comes to my mind. What allowed you to jump into mobile home parks, and what's your vision and of how you would describe mobile home parks to people if they were going to invest in them?
Well, 30,000 foot level, I owned apartments in the past. I owned duplexes, single family. So did my partner. And we were sick of all the maintenance, the CapEx, the turn fees, fix and toilet, all the things that come with owning the buildings. And so once we learned about mobile home parks, we had this, before we bought it, we just had this idea or this theory. Hey, like, what if we were just to buy this land? Yeah, we own the infrastructure, the plumbing, the water lines, or the septic systems, right? But we don't own the buildings. We don't own the homes. And that was attractive to me because I thought, look, if I can keep expenses low, then the NOI, it's a closer actual NOI versus, I think, in apartments or other asset classes. A lot of times that NOI is swept over to CapEx. So that was our theory. Our theory has been proven true over time. Our mobile home parks today, the NOI is very, very close to true NOI. I call it true NOI because I can actually keep most of that NOI, at least after debt service, right? Versus in apartment complexes and other assets where you own the building, you're actually sweeping that over to CapEx for larger things, roofs, HVAC, that kind of stuff. So that's one piece. There's also a lot of things about mobile home parks that are beneficial, right? Like your tenant base. We have tenants that stick around for anywhere from 5 to 20 years. People don't move their homes that often. They own the home. The cost to move is too high. It's cost prohibitive to move a home. They also live in these communities that they love and respect versus sometimes low-income apartments can just turn into a hellhole. So for us, our model has been, hey, how do we take over these communities where owners have done a terrible job, all the way from financials to the actual property operations, fix the operations, fix the financials, and then hold for the long term. And so I'll go back a little bit into the COVID era and the printing of capital and the inflation that we saw. Our portfolio was not affected the same way as an apartment portfolio. In other words, our expense column did not grow the same way as an apartment portfolio's expense column would grow, or apartment complex, I should say. And so for me, it's like, we're not affected by inflation as much because I have a very small expense column versus other assets you are. My expenses on a mobile home park run anywhere from 20 to say 40% expense ratio on the high end. A lot of our parks are right around that, like late 20s to early 30s expense ratio.
Yeah, no, that's I like that idea. So where are your expenses coming from? Wastewater treatment, landscaping, common lights? I guess I think you kind of described it good. I don't know if many people pick this up, but like, you own the infrastructure. Essentially,
Yeah.
You own the town. Is that where most of your expense load comes from?
Yeah. So if you think about it, we own the roads. We own the sewer pipes or the septic system, depending on your utilities. We own the water lines. Culverts and drainage, that kind of stuff. And then you have the other soft costs, right? Bookkeeping, accounting, you have management costs. There'll be a maintenance, some sort of maintenance that could be maintaining those systems or tree trimming or whatever that is. And so, but when you look at the expense column, it's pretty light, especially compared to an apartment complex or alternative asset. I just compare it to apartments because I also own those. So I see the delta between the two. But yeah, bookkeeping, accounting, some legal for maybe evictions or we also have an asset manager. So there's an asset management fee. So that kind of stuff.
Right. And so your evictions, I guess, so let's just go through the premise, kind of walk through the whole process. You buy a park and you have a bunch of tenants staying there. I guess step one, like, I got so many questions because I can't even remember the last time we had a mobile home park, and I've heard a few guys talking about them. But step one is your underwriting, I guess, essentially the pad rent, comparatively speaking, to what an apartment costs you. Is that kind of the premise of what you guys are looking at?
Yeah, good question. So really, we use the rule of thumb that the top of rents in a market, like in a market that's healthy, steady population, and or growing, with low vacancy, your top of rents is going to be about 50% of 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartments. And that's not a perfect rule of thumb, but it gets really, really close. And you'll notice people that are exiting, say, LoopNet or Crexi or some of these retail sites, and they're exiting at top dollar, you can back into their lot rent, and it's almost always right around that 50% of 2-bedroom, 1-bath. So one of the very first thing I look at is, hey, does this have room for rent appreciation, especially if we're going to put a lot of CapEx into it? So when it comes to rent, that's our rule of thumb. Of course, you have to understand vacancy rate in the local area, right? If you got a 10% vacancy rate, well, you're just not going to have the same lever to increase rents and invest in the property.
Yeah. So you buy a property, you end up with, let's just use a 20 pad site. 15 of them are existing tenants. You come in, hey, I'm bumping your rent, but I'm also doing all this CapEx. But then you got 5 pads, 3 of them are vacant, and 2 of them have houses on them. What do we do with the 3 vacant pads, and what do we do with the 2 pads that have decent mobile homes that might have been left behind?
Well, good question. I mean, we're dealing with this all the time. So, the 2 homes that are left behind, we're going to do whatever we can to remodel them, to renovate them. Even if they're in really, really dire shape, we want to renovate them because buying new homes is really, really tough. Buying a new home could be, $80,000 by the time it's landed and it's skirted and it's decked and all the things. So we want to do whatever we can to renovate those 2 homes, and then we'll go to market. We'll sell those off, likely on an RTO, so rent to own contract, where the tenant buys it, they're paying a lot rent, and they're paying payments to us. We're the bank, and they're also responsible for the maintenance, just like you are on your own home. So that's the 2 homes that are vacant. The pads that are actual vacant with nothing on them, this is the big challenge of MHP. A lot of brokers will say, hey, like there's all this upside potential because you have all these vacant pads and you can fill them. The challenge is, first of all, moving in new homes is very cost prohibitive. It's tough to put a brand new, beautiful home next to a 1970s home, as well as sometimes that tenant. So people don't always want to do that. And so the only way, or I guess the best way to fill those pads is going to be used homes. There is a used home market. People do sell their homes and you can move those in. We've done some of that, but that's not something that during underwriting that we give credit to. So a vacant pad, we give 0 credit to. We only give credit to an occupied pad because that's actually, we don't want to assume that we can infill these. If we do, it's sort of a cherry on top.
That's very, very interesting. And then I guess the final thing is you're owning these. How do you operate them? Do you have a manager on site? And then talk to us a little bit about the eviction process. Is it similar to or different than a standard apartment eviction?
Yeah, so I'll hit management first. I mean, our general model, and there's a lot of intricacies to this, but we have an on-site manager. That's somebody who lives in the community, and I call it kind of manager light, right? They're going to help enforce rules. They're going to help report like, hey, this guy's got 2 broken down cars in the yard, or somebody's not paying. They'll deliver the letter. So they're sort of helping manage the part, but they're not necessarily intercepting any financials. In the park world, we've seen a ton of cash transactions that usually goes to the on-site manager. And unfortunately, a lot of times that's stolen. So we bypass that. Nobody pays the on-site manager rent. They'll either pay through, go to the local Walmart and pay there. We've got sort of a system for that, or they're gonna pay online. And so yes, we have a manager on site. They report to the asset manager. The asset manager, today we partner with a company called Coast. And prior to that, we had an in-house asset manager who helped us kind of grow up. But now today we partner with a professional manager, and we're actually partners with them. So they do have a piece of the GP equity. So they have a stake in the game in making these things awesome. And so that's a transition we made in the last 3 or 4 months. I've found that when I listen to or learn from the most successful people in the world, they bring people into their world and they give them some sort of equity stake because they care. And we didn't do that for a long time. And I think we suffered because of that. We were looking for a manager and an asset manager, and she did her job, but she just didn't have that same buy-in. So today we've transitioned to a team that manages it and also has some of that upside.
What are a few quick tips or things to either look out for, or to positive things or stuff to completely stay away from? Let's say there's somebody who wants to transition and start buying some mobile home parks, and it's, maybe it's a property out of area.
Yeah.
Is there a certain amount of like minimum pads or minimum units that they should do? You look for maybe, target expense rates. I've heard related to like you never really want to buy anything that unless it's on public water, public sewer. Like what are a few tips and tricks of like, hey, if you're looking out for these are 3 or 4 things that you want to make sure this has or doesn't have.
Yeah, well, I'll start with lot size or occupied lots. For us, we're 40 and above. Anywhere below that, the problem is the property becomes really inefficient. So every expense means a lot more on a 20-unit park than it does on a 40-unit park. And so you think about management. You're going to basically pay the same for an asset manager, an on-site manager for a small park as you are a big park. One big CapEx project on a small park can take you out and take away your cash flow pretty quick. So we've learned our lesson. We've bought stuff in the 20s. It's never really worked that great. Our wins have all taken place in 40 plus units. The thing that you have to understand, I think, with parks is that you're buying a piece of land and you're buying systems. And so the systems are really, really important. You're right. The bee's knees of parks is city utilities, city water, city sewer. Right. And so, but that's not always the case. And so I think really understanding your systems going in. So what we'll see a lot of times is city water and multiple septics dispersed throughout the park. So understanding those, scoping lines, popping lids, understanding those septic systems, because those can be really expensive over time. When it comes to septic or sewer, there's also wastewater treatment plants. There's also lagoons. We have one park with a wastewater treatment plant. We did a lot of due diligence on that because those can be really expensive. We don't own any with lagoons. Lagoons are something that we've, traditionally avoided because the renovation costs or the cleanup costs or the decommission costs can be like $300 to $500 to $1 million sometimes. So if you were to buy a property that has a lagoon, that could absolutely just take you out. So systems are a really important thing to understand. I think beyond that, I'm looking at the environmental. We always do an environmental report, make sure there's no contamination. And then the last thing I think is like, be careful when you're talking to brokers, man. They want to sell these properties and they're going to sell those vacant lots. They're going to sell that as upside in these parks. Yeah. And to fill those vacant lots is like, I've been at this for multiple years now, and it's very, very, very tough to fill those vacant lots. And so when you're underwriting these, you cannot give any value to those vacant lots.
Is that just because it's too cost prohibited for the price of what it costs to get one there these days? Like if it's $80,000 to buy something, it just, plus they got the lot rent, it just makes it unaffordable. Is that more of what it is? And ideally you want someone who already has an existing unit or existing whatever it's called, trailer, mobile home, that's moving it there. But like, that's not the easiest thing to find.
It's tough. Yeah. So like there's all these like challenges. So like, for example, does somebody who's paying $80,000 to $100,000 for a home want to live next to a 1970s mobile home that's like in pretty tough shape and has pretty tough tenants? The answer is usually no on that. So then you say, okay, well, do we go buy these? So then we go buy the $80,000 homes, either cash or finance. And there's a finance fee to that, our holding costs. And do we rent those out to folks? A lot of times the rent's not going to cover everything. So the cost of new homes is really tricky.
Wait, one more question on this, Ian, and then dig in. What would you say, and I think you might have mentioned something like this earlier, but like if someone's looking at an apartment versus a mobile home, is in this might be a general statement, is the cost of a mobile home monthly, is that usually less than what a similar clientele apartment would cost? And so that's kind of like the first part. And or more people like kind of moving in there that are just, hey, I got a friend and I want them to be my neighbor, or things like that. Like, or most of these areas, would you say lower price points than apartments, higher price points than apartments?
There's multiple answers to that, because if they're paying lot rent only and they own their own trailer, then it's going to be usually half or less than the comparable two-bedroom apartment of the same size. So I own my 2-bedroom, 1-bath home and it's 1,200 square feet. If I were to go rent something, it's $1,000, but this lot is $500.
Got it.
So that's one way to look at it. Now, there are POH homes, park-owned homes, and that's another sort of like thing that's different than, say, apartments where we own the home, and we do own some homes. We're always trying to sell those off. But in that case, you're going to be actually close to the lowest 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment rent. So if it's $1,000, we're going to be right around $800 to $1,000.
Got it.
And people, it's interesting because a low income apartment is not always the best choice for somebody who has got $1,000 a month, because the mobile home park offers something different. It's community. You're dispersed. You're not on top of each other. You got a yard. You've got parking spaces. It's a different thing. So there's a clientele that prefers that over a low income apartment.
Yeah. Home ownership technically. How do you end up with the POHs? Through evictions or leave behinds? Obviously, when you buy them, I know you're stepping into shit, but long-term holding, how do you guys end up owning homes?
I would say mostly when you buy, we're trying to look for stuff that's under 20% POH. First of all, we don't love to inherit a ton of them, but we'll do it. So mostly when you buy, there are situations where people will abandon a home and you go through the title process to retitle, and you'll end up with the homes where you need to fix it up and sell it off. So it's technically a POH. We have bought a couple brand new homes in a nicer community, and so those are POH homes, and we do rent those out. But it's something that we try to stay away from, because we want to get away from any CapEx projects having to do with homes.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And then really what I was going to ask you, talk about, before, we wrap up here, talk about Class A or development. Like, what is the future of mobile home parks? Because like here where we are in the metro of Philly, a buddy of mine just bought a farm that he's turning into a gigantic subdivision. There's a mobile home park that touches it. He's acquired that, and he's gone to the town and said, if you don't give me my entitlements for the houses, I'm going to turn this whole place, in this 30 acres, into a mobile home park. And they said, we don't want any mobile home parks. We want you to mow it all over. Yeah. So is there a declining inventory, and what are people developing mobile home parks? Do we see that right now in the marketplace?
So this is interesting. I mean, this is what separates us again from other asset classes. We have about 44,000 parks in the country. And everything that I've read is the inventory is disappearing by 1% per year. So you have an asset class where inventory supply is decreasing, but demand is growing. I like those fundamentals, but what that means is there's not a lot of opportunity for development. Most cities or counties or city leadership, they talk out of two sides of their mouth. One is, hey, we want affordable housing, but then when you give them a solution or a project for a mobile home park, they're like, well, we didn't really mean it. So we don't have a lot of development of mobile home parks. There's also not really land that's like designated or zoned for mobile home parks. Most of these properties we've taken over are some sort of variance or special use permit. So I don't think that we're going to see a growing inventory of mobile home parks. We have seen some in sort of the Sunbelt states, some of the baby boomer, some of the nicer parks like in Florida or Arizona or, things like that. But like as a whole, we're not developing more of these. So for us, it's a long-term land bank that pays us. You can force appreciate it. It's cash flow. It's low expense. But at some point, maybe our portfolio or some of our portfolio is bought for a different use. We don't kick people out. We don't redevelop parks. We just make them better for, because we're sort of in the affordable housing world. But going back, it's interesting because a lot of apartments owners really focus on like, well, is there an oversupply or is there an undersupply, or how many cranes are in the air, and what's my absorption rate? All of these things, we don't deal with any of that because our supply is just simply decreasing.
Yeah, that's interesting. The storage world, you see an increase in supply. Pretty much every asset class we're in is an increase in supply. I've been attracted to land for exactly what you're talking about, because you can't make any more of it, and there is that forced appreciation. For us, what we see out here a lot is age-restricted communities. I guess are technically mobile home parks, but they're kind of like, I don't know how they tax them, but it's more or less a fixed property in my opinion. But they come in all beautifully skirted. I guess that's where you see most of your development. That, and then Sunbelt states, RV parks. Now, do you tinker in the RV parks, or is that a completely different business in your mind?
So we do have one short-term RV park. It's in our backyard. It was kind of a one-off awesome deal. So, and we love that. It's a great asset, but it's not something that we're pursuing. RV parks are dangerous, in my opinion. We've seen, the COVID, the post-COVID rush or during COVID, there was a huge rush. Everyone got excited. RV parks were crushing it. And now there's a lot of RV park owners that I think are in a lot of trouble. So I don't love the nightly stay model. We do inherit some parks that have long-term RV component, but today I looked at that a lot different than an MHP. They can move overnight. You increase the rent or change something, they can pick up and move versus a mobile home tenant's going to stay. So yes, we do have some RV component because that's sort of the natural order of things. When homes disappear, a lot of times you're going to infill with an RV, but we try to stay away from that.
Right on. Dude, I love it. I don't know. Every time we do one of these interviews where it's like, oh man, it's an interesting asset class. I know Jason's going to call me here in the next hour. Yo, dude, so if you stumble on it's interesting, right? Because I think you've kind of debunked a lot of, or you're talking very highly of your asset class, as you should, but like you've debunked a lot of the, man, it's just the shithole around the corner where the tires are stacked through the roofs, right? Like you really like boxed it up to say it is affordable housing and you're just owning the land, which there is a long-term covered land play. There is a declining inventory that makes you want to be more attracted to it, so it's a pretty interesting business model. So,
well, and I'll speak to the tenants. We have amazing tenants. These people are, the majority of our tenants are working families, whether it's in the construction industry, we have police officers, we have school teachers, and so when we take over a community, what we find is a community needs leadership, and it needs really strong leadership, because a lot of times maybe 5 out of 50 or 3 out of 50 are bad eggs. They want them out. They want to pay more rent for a better place to live, a safer place to live, for a playground, for a gazebo, for the kids to stand under while they wait for the school bus. So our tenants are our partners, man. They're awesome. I do understand that mobile home parks might get a bad name, but these tenants are awesome contributors to our society, and I think they deserve a place to live that they're proud of.
Yeah, I love that mindset. That's actually a very interesting way to view it. Having a leader, putting the improvements in, being a good business owner. And there's certain asset classes you do that in, and it doesn't matter. You can only polish a turd so much, and it doesn't matter. Sure. Because they're transacting business there, or it's the apartment building that's always got a bad name, and you can try, right? So, and I think just thinking about it, and I'm just speaking out loud here, is, when people do own the homes, they are more invested into saying, hey, like I rent a lot from you, but I own this home. This is my house. It's not just an apartment that I can pick up and leave tomorrow, that I actually want these bad people out. And if Mitch and his team are going to come in here and do that, I'm going to follow suit. I'm going to pay extra rent in exchange for that. So I think that's a really cool and interesting opportunity. Mitch, this has been awesome. What one thing we like to ask all of and I know we didn't get much into the mindset. We're going to have you back on about some mindset stuff. But what's one good book or podcast that you think everybody should go check out or give a listen to?
I'll go to the book. I think Think and Grow Rich is really valuable. I've read that probably 2 or 3 times. Just really understanding that what you believe sort of dictates your filter for the world. I don't think it's magic or woo-woo or spiritual or anything, but we're inundated with thousands and thousands of opportunities and thoughts and conversations and people and relationships and all those things. And when you align your beliefs to your big why and what you really want in your life, you filter for that. And so I think reinforcing that mindset with books like Rich Dad Poor Dad, for example, I love the Kiyosaki series, as well as Think and Grow Rich, I think are my sort of go-tos.
Yeah, and now this is where we let you have that shameless plug for the one book behind you that you didn't get the plug. But where's the best place people can find you on the internet? They want to learn more about your group, or they want to invest in one of your deals?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So 0 to the number 100tribe.com. You guys can go there and check us out. We also have a book, 0 to 100 Units, is on Amazon. So go check that out. That's literally just walks you through like, hey, how do I get in this game? How do I get my mindset right? How do I analyze small deals? And then we move all the way up into big deals, looking at syndicating, joint venture deals, exactly what we do today. So we walk through the whole thing in the book. And then, of course, our podcast, which Ian, you're on our podcast, so go check out his episode. 0 to 100 Tribe is the podcast. So yeah, come check us out and get a hold of us.
Yeah, that's awesome. We will get all of that in the show notes. Mitch, we appreciate you joining us all the way out there on the West Coast. I know it's early for you right now. But guys, if you get any value out of this, go check out Mitch and all the stuff he's doing. or just give them a share. Guys dropping bombs left and right, and we will catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.